And just minutes after Graham Platner dropped out of the Senate race, some Maine Democrats who did not capture wins in the June 9th primary announcing bids for the Senate. Former gubernatorial candidate Troy Jackson, who previously endorsed Platner and stood shoulder to shoulder with him, said, quote, "I'm in a social media post." Jackson is a fifth-generation logger from Allagash. He filed paperwork with the Federal Elections Commission on Tuesday for an exploratory run. In a statement, he said, quote, "There is a powerful movement of working-class people in the state of Maine and millions more across America who are ready to send a progressive fighter to the Senate. I've been fighting for that movement my whole life, and I'm sure as hell not backing down now when this fight is needed most." And a spokesperson for former CD2 candidate Jordan Wood said he would also run for the seat. Wood, who originally was running for the Democratic nomination in this Senate race, is back where he started. Paige Loud, a political newcomer who finished fourth in the Democratic primary for Maine's 2nd congressional district seat, has filed a statement of candidacy with the FEC. And Dr. Narav Shah and Shenna Bellows have also expressed interest in running, saying they have received calls but have not confirmed a candidacy